afternoon, John.
Hi, Marty.
Marty Keller here. Before we started recording, we've been talking about a number of things, and um, I was just raising with you the issue of uh, feeling safe to raise things that seem really ticklish or scary in a group setting, particularly when it might be about my relationship with somebody in the group. And just wanted to know a little bit about your thoughts and experience with that, because um, that requires, as I look at it, without hearing what you've said yet, what you're going to say, that requires, for me anyway, willingness to be vulnerable beyond that which I'm willing to do.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I run into this with when I'm doing a group, and whoever's in the group say I want to work through an issue that I'm struggling with, and if I get the hint that it's somebody in the room, I ask, is it somebody's present? Or they'll say, I don't want to talk about this. And I'll say, well, is it because the person's in the room? And they'll tell me. And I'll say, depending on my intuitive hit, I'll either say, well, it's probably a good idea right now not to do that one. Can you think of another? Or would you be willing to ask the other person if they're willing to do this with you? And then create a connection between whoever they're focused on, the two people. And then what I do, especially with somebody who isn't used to this, is front load to the person that is receiving this judgment judgment, that it's never about the other person. So
Right.
what this person is going to do is say his judgment of you and own it. And it may be difficult for you to hear this. And if at any time you want to stop, just say so, and it's over. We stop. Because this is very, very difficult to do in the presence with the person you're especially if you're new. And if the two people agree, I talk about my projections are never about the other person. They're always about something I'm struggling with internally that the other person is mirroring for me. And I'm willing to own that projection. And it's a very sensitive topic when two people in the room are willing to do that. And when I've asked, most people are willing to do it with my guidance,
Right.
As long as I don't get accusational and the person just wants a platform to beat somebody up. So yeah. Even when you're doing it with a person that the other person isn't in the room, it's a family member or a friend or somebody in another place. The difficulty is in knowing, is learning and embodying that the judgment, the high intensity judgment, is simply a clearer mirror. The more intensity, the clearer it is that I'm struggling with that issue towards myself. If I say somebody's an arrogant, pompous ass, and I own that, so I'll take it to the accountability tree. I'm an arrogant, pompous ass, and that emotional part of me, that emotional body that hasn't forgotten how to do this process, will hear that I am as a validation for the perception that was cemented isn't the right word, formed in my childhood that I held on myself. I saw myself as, or, um, in my attempts to survive, pompous ass seemed like a really good place to be because people left me the hell alone. And this is subconscious. So in the owning of pompous ass, I'm actually validating that part of me that made the determination, in spite of the consequences, to stay safe, which is safe is in that term is safe with synonymous with stuff. So me judging somebody as being pompous is how I come across to people in my attempt to help or in my attempt to facilitate something or in a friendship where I'm actually condescending where I think I'm helping. That's my what I've learned about myself as a pompous ass because I got that in me. Um, and when I own it, the emotional body goes through my whole experience, that whole subconscious pool of information, and taps into the authentic part of me who is a feeling compassionate being. And the inspiration of what comes to me is I want to be, it is my intent to be compassionate, or is my intent to be kind, or it is my intent to be humble. Um, and again, that humble, that intent fuses with that emotional awareness of this happened to me and this is the result, pompous ass, fuses with that and then simply goes back down into the subconscious, reframed. And now I simply pay attention to when I look at whoever I thought was a pompous ass, my perception of them now. And in my experience, it always shifts. Now, here's the deal. That person may be using that avoidant type of behavior, pompous ass. It may be right there. It can be absolutely true, but me attacking that other person without doing it in a compassionate way, which I can now do now because I've owned my own pompous ass. I know the pain that goes with that. I know the situations and results that that's created in my life. I can then offer listening. I can offer compassion, a feeling tone where they feel safe enough to open up and look at their own stuff if they want to. And that's none of my business. What they do, their journey is none of my business. So it's very touchy subject. And when two people are willing to do that, it's very, very, very powerful.
I testify to that. I know that you and I have done that with a third party before, and that certainly, I'm thinking back to that time, and yeah, that's very powerful. One of the contexts for this question is somebody said something in a Rusty Nail Club meeting last week. Several people made the comment to me and to my fellow facilitator, something to the effect of, "You guys make me feel safe in this room." And I was thinking about the impossibility of me making anybody feel safe. And I actually plan to raise it in a future meeting about, how do we generate this sense of safety and security in a space when we're the ones that are going to be generating that. And so I'm wondering whether the principle works regardless of what the projection is. We normally work with projections of things that feel scary or painful, but it could also be the opposite, couldn't it? So I'm seeing you as safe when I'm actually the one that's generating safety.
Yes,
Or I'm creating it so I feel good in this room.
projection is 100%. And a lot of times I'll introduce the concept of projection, which you see in the other person you have issue with, you're irritated, agitated, otherwise annoyed, is actually something in you. and they'll take it as projection is always negative.
Right.
Projection is always, period. And whatever you see in that other person is something that is you. It cannot, you cannot see something in somebody else, wisdom, safety, serenity, welcomingness, without
Humility.
humility, without you having an idea of what that is, an embodiment of what that is. And I'll do that every once in a while to explain or to demonstrate to the people in the room. Um, Somebody will have an issue with, well, everything I see in everybody is always me, and I don't see how that could be. And I said, well, what do you see in me? When you look at me, what do you see? And for the most part, kind, open, um, honest. And I said, well, okay, that's you. Now, if you want to check with me about all those things, I'll tell you whether it's true about me. It's always a projection and assumption until you check with the other person. So it's across the board, 100%. So even the beauty and the grace and the generosity and the graciousness is also a mirror of you.
I sometimes wonder if that isn't even harder for some of us to accept. So now let's say me. So
Right.
I've had this experience many, many, many times in my life when I've just really fallen in love with somebody, and I just, in my mind, I have this list of all these qualities that I find just absolutely not just attractive, but sexy.
Yeah.
And now for me to turn around and go, I'm all of that, including sexy,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's
And
interesting.
it's also true.
And it's true. I get it. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, is it that Marianne Williamson quote about our greatest fear isn't that we're not good enough? Our greatest fear is that we might actually be God or be
Our
divine or
greatest fear is
something like
that
that.
our greatest fear is that we're brilliant beyond measure. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. 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 Because if that's true, then we assume enlightened position, and we know where all those people are, either hanging on a cross, shot, or sitting on some hill, lonely as hell because nobody wants to talk to them. So no, hell no, we don't want that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one time we were in a meeting and one of our friends was facilitating, and the person was really struggling. And so the facilitator had this inspiration to ask her if she would be willing to say, I hold value as a human being. And that
Yeah.
just opened it up because she couldn't say it.
Right.
And I was sitting next to her and I watched her body like trying to stop her from saying it. It was like, it was the most, and when she did, because you could also see, I could see, she was determined to say it. So right in front of my eyes was this struggle of our humanity,
Yes.
this struggle that Marianne Williamson put her finger on in that famous saying that you just quoted, is right in her physical. I mean, I've never seen anything quite so uh, essential. I mean, the whole essence of the thing was right there. And when she finally said it, because she was going to say it, even though her body did not want her to say it,
Yeah.
and this burst of sunshine showed up in the room
Yeah.
when she finally did it, and like it moved heaven and earth. I'm telling, that may sound exaggerated to people who are listening for the first time, but that was the experience.
Yes.
And then she did some work.
Yes. And it speaks not only to the family of origin conditioning that there's something wrong, intrinsically wrong with the human condition, but it also speaks to the societal, and depending on which religion or sect or belief system you aspire to or have been raised in, it all talks about how the flesh is weak and we need to be more spiritual, and we need to want it because we know we've been told we can't have it because we're so decrepit and perverted, and it's this it creates safety. safety in the dysfunction, and it's the body's been trained to hold us in this. I don't know why stasis came to me, but this place where at least we'll survive. We're in survival mode, and it's charged, and it is the body is the most powerful mechanism on this planet, creative mechanism, and it's the fight, flight, freeze, reticular activating system, survival mechanism that says we'll stay alive as long as we hold our position in this hierarchy. And the hierarchy has been delineated. We know our spot, and if you try to move up, well, there's my pompous ass right now. You become this person who will lead you to hell, wherever that might be in this conditioning.
Yeah. I've long speculated as a result of being involved in this work, John, that the human condition really boils down to our struggle to accept being human. So
which is a magnificent, brilliant,
right,
creative being.
Right. But here's the. Oh, go ahead.
On a celestial body.
I know.
Which we can call heaven because it's in the heavens. For Pete's sakes, we're floating in a void. We look out into the stars and say, I want to be a celestial. I want to go to that celestial place. Well, dude, take a look. Look down. You're standing on that celestial body.
Yeah.
You're there. It's like, this is beyond. This is insidious. Yes.
Couple of observations, and to continue the thought. One of the challenges that we have in the human condition is that we have this brilliant mind, and this mind, as you just implied in what you said, can take us anywhere without physically moving. Right now, I can picture the Big Bang. I can picture anything.
Yes.
And the challenge we have is that the human mind can create a picture of what perfection should be, and then notice how we don't measure up to that picture that we've created, without our necessarily being aware that that's just a picture that we created, and it may not be accurate. It may not comport with actual reality. And so somehow, early on, we developed this sense of what should be, and our capacity to create and see that's the Garden of Eden in the Bible. That's what it should be. And then we notice how we fall short of it. And then we get into this something's wrong mode. I'm not living up to this picture of perfection I should be.
Yeah, when we are at it's insidious, and I'm actually drawing a blank right now, which is okay because there's something coming. I know there's something coming.
Well, you shouldn't be drawing a blank.
I know, and it's like. Maybe I don't have to even say anything about that.
Yeah.
See what comes up. It's like saying for me saying, contemplating what is God and coming to the conclusion that I have no idea, and it's beyond. I don't know. And when I say I don't know, it opens up tremendous amounts of possibilities and freedom in the moment to experience my life here. I mean, for Pete's sakes, we're on this blue ball, 93 million miles from a fireball going in a circle around it, and then all of this thing moving in some direction. We don't even know what direction is up. If you ask me where's up, I don't know. And and then you say, well, who is God? Or I need to know God. It's like, no, I don't. I'm going to pay attention to what's going on here, and have that enough. I don't know. And I find myself in this conversation with you. I find us building a body of work to address issues that people don't normally talk about. And I find myself traveling the world talking to people about accountability. It's like, wow.
So let's bring it back to that, because I think one of the brilliance of, and you may not have been aware of this when you started working this out. Yeah, you probably weren't, but one of the brilliant powers of this process is that it always starts with getting present with what is.
Yes.
And opening ourselves to just being with what is. When I'm with what is, even if it's unpleasant, I have that, we've talked about this many times on this podcast, I have that physical vibratory response to the truth. So what is the truth. And so no matter where my mind might take me on a flight of fancy or a flight of escape, accountability brings me back to what is. And in what is, now here's the philosophical thing people might want to doze off for, but in what is, there's nothing else. There's no not is. Only the mind can picture something not being there, but the body can't do that. The body can only be present with its vibratory reality. And for me, accountability works because it always brings me back to the inescapable, eternal present moment that I always am in. And I have a mind that can take me out of it and return me back to it.
Yeah. And to have an experience is profound. To have a feeling, tone, a quality, a taste, a pleasant smell, an interaction is heavenly. It's profound. And yes, I get. So what do I want? I want to do this more. I want to talk more. I want to travel and talk to people about accountability. It is my intent to assist people to build a foundation as a springboard to awareness and joy.
So to help people hear what you just said, my question is what we often ask people in the Rusty Nail Club group is, if you were to have that, what would be your internal state of feeling? What are you feeling right now when you set that intention?
It's a
what's present in you?
I don't know if I can describe it. It's tingly. It's centered. It's aware. It's present. It's beyond the word exciting. It's the experience of being alive.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have to go anywhere to get it.
Exactly.
Right now, yeah. I'm going to leave it at that. So.
Well, this is the brilliance of the human body and the human condition, that we can generate these feeling states deliberately, intentionally. It's like you were saying earlier about that feeling of safety that we generate that ourselves, or a sense of beauty or even sexiness that we see in someone else. It's existing here a priori. It's here first. Otherwise, I couldn't see it in the other person. I couldn't experience it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we talk about in group meetings is what's the avenue toward generating that deliberately? And we use intentionality. Setting an intention is the first step in deliberately generating a state of being and feeling that is what we actually want to have. And we use the accountability process where we get in touch with the truth of an unpleasant feeling, shame, fear, grief, whatever that we've been hiding from ourselves, to get to the truth, the vibrational feeling of being in the truth. And in that vibration, this takes us back to Neville Goddard. In that vibration in the body, we now have access to anything else. We always had access to that fear or that grief or that shame, but we also have access to the joy, the exuberance, the carefree energy that we came into this world with to begin with. And now it's just a question of using tools, because I trained myself for years and years and years and years to repress those feelings of joy and happiness. And I became addicted to shame and grief and fear. And I still see that. It's like, oh my God, there's my addiction. I'd rather wallow in self-pity right now over something, because I've lost my faith in the moment that I can generate joy and happiness. Oh, okay, I got it. What do I want? And I can go right back to the intention and just reset my intention or restate my intention. I intend to experience life as joy, peace, freedom, and community. So what happens for me in doing this process over these years is that slowly but surely, every time I feel that energy from the defense mechanism that I created as a little kid to stay safe, I no longer try to get rid of that, but I now use it as a launching pad to go back to this intention for something even more powerful. So I want to surround my defense mechanism with joy, peace, freedom, and community. Not try to repress it, not try to change it, allow it to be, but allow it to be in a much more satisfactory, satisfying emotional environment.
So what came to my mind while you were speaking is where this all started for me. This search, or this desire to have something different than I had, and it was when I was what the 12-step calls the bottom. I had lost everything that I saw as giving me value, which was my work ethic, my capacity to make money, my ability to work. That's where I was a workaholic. That to the people around me, that wasn't enough for them, and that's all I had. And when I was rejected or told that there's something else, I had no recourse, because that's what I knew. So I searched it out. I happened to go to a 12-step meeting, Adult Children of Alcoholics. I began reading books, looking for something I was missing. So the good news, I was able to recognize that I was hurting, and I wanted assistance, or I wanted a way out. I wanted somebody to tell me what to do now, because I had everything. I had the wife, the 2 kids, the picket fence, 10 acres, animals in the 4-H. I was doing everything that I was supposed to do, and I was not happy. I was miserable. So now I've come to see myself as, I heard this term when I first got in, grateful alcoholic, and I'm thinking, what are they talking about? This sucks. I don't see how they can be grateful for this. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have started this search. I wouldn't have started this journey. I wouldn't have created or looked at what I love to do as compared to what I was doing. I was good at what I did. It was easy for me, and yet it wasn't fulfilling. So
I just can't picture you as a workaholic, John.
I was you know how many hours in a week? You know, and I know this. There's 168 hours in a week. You know how many hours I was on plant in 1 week? 148. I would get 3 hours. I brought in a sleeping bag and a airfoam mattress, and I'd get 3 hours of sleep, do my rounds for 6 days, went home for a couple hours, came back and did it again. And the bad news was they wouldn't let me put 148 on my time card. They only let me put 100. Um, yeah, that's the kind of workaholic I was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was it that, what was driving that?
I made money. I had a paycheck. I could tally it up at the end of the year and say,
Yeah. That's what you told yourself. But what was the inner reward you got for exhausting yourself?
I didn't have to feel any pain. I didn't have to get close to anybody because people were scary. I was estranged from my wife. I mean, I'd see her evenings, dinner time evenings, and I'd go back to work. I didn't have to get close to anybody. At the time, I didn't know that I didn't want to get
Right.
close to anybody because everything looked like I was working for was for them, and it wasn't. It was to keep me from them.
So is it fair to say that the psychic reward included emotional safety?
Yeah, yeah, and safety, and it was miserable. Now I feel safe, and I'm connected to people.
Right.
So it's been a long journey, and it started with accountability. It started with looking inward instead of looking outward.
Right.
It, um, it was actually a slow process for me, and with the information I've gotten and the material I put together, I want to make that as short a period as possible for anybody that's willing to take a look and get curious about what I'm offering, what you're offering, and
Well, again, I think that one of the things that I love about the way that you've worked this out is no one has to bring anything special to this encounter. All one has to do is bring oneself and one's willingness to engage. We when I met you, I brought everything I needed to do this work.
yeah, yeah,
That was it. I didn't have to do any homework. I didn't have to read any particular books. I didn't have to see any videos. I just had to be willing to engage.
yeah,
And you ask a question in a room full of people that might be meeting you for the first time, you'll ask a simple question like, what is it that you don't have now or that you used to have but don't have anymore that you'd like to have? And
mm-hmm.
boom, we're off to the races.
We're off to the races. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the recognition of saying something that I'm looking for. What I have put together now is that reticular activating system actually created a new focus, which then allowed new information to come in that wasn't in my frame of reference, which was work, be good, um, do what's right, and you'll be okay.
One of the things that we talked about last night in our Rusty Nail Club meeting, I was talking about what I believe. We were talking about beliefs, and so I was just talking about a belief that I had about how how I would experience love, and I realized doing this work that I had a very narrow aperture in my armor through which love could come through, and if it didn't come through in this exact way, then there was no love. I didn't realize that as I created that, I had just created this ginormous egg of armor plating to keep it out, so nobody could really get it in here. And actually, I suspect if somebody got it in here, but I would say no, that's not it.
Right. Yeah.
So I created the intention. It's my intention to experience love the way people want me to experience it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now I find myself, when people say loving things to me, I hear them that way. Instead of, oh, well, oh, you know, anybody could do that, or in my mind going, that person wants something, or those kinds of deflections. It's like, no, it's my intention to experience joy, peace, freedom, and community. That's community. That's love. That makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed myself in return being equally generous with connecting kinds of comments, supporting people when they're struggling,
Mm-hmm.
and just say, you know, you're doing a good job. Hang in there. Because, as you know, some of this work is can feel, when we're in it, very excruciatingly painful.
Awkward, absolutely.
Yeah.
And rich and abundant also at the same time.
Right. We started a process when we check out of our meetings that we ask people to share something that they're grateful for, as well as an intention that they would like to set for themselves. And I've noticed increasingly that people, one of the things people express gratitude for is for the other people in the meeting.
Yeah.
And you know, I take that as we're becoming more and more aware of the power of that love that we bring in just witnessing what someone else is struggling with and seeking to express as truthfully and honestly as possible.
Right. Being there for somebody else. Getting
Yeah.
out of ourselves and being there for somebody else.
Yeah.
Powerful process.
We talked about this in an earlier podcast, the unique value of doing this work in a group setting. There's value in one-on-one work. There's value in working with a therapist or a spiritual counselor or life coach, whatever. But there's something else that occurs in this larger setting, at least for me. I'll just speak for myself, that I couldn't imagine doing this work any other way.
There's a couple of things that came to my mind. My wounding came in the presence of other people.
Right.
Necessarily, my healing will come in the presence of other people. I just forgot the second one, so that's okay. And Alice Miller talks about having somebody witness your pain, and she calls it enlightened witness, where somebody simply listens and accepts you just the way you are, with no judgment or blame. It's an allowing of you being you, and in exactly where you're at, instead of expected to be someplace else.
Yeah. Well, I do think that is the experience that we have. It's an experience that I have when I'm in a group setting. Is I've been doing this group work for years. I mean, you and I started working the men's work 10 years ago. And I can't recall any time that anyone ever said, well, you shouldn't do that, or let me give you some advice here, or anything that I would have heard as a kid that would feel like some kind of diminishment of my experience, some kind of violence to my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was on the alert for it, and I'm still 10 years into doing this stuff, I still find myself being on the alert from time to time. It's like those old defense surveillance is always, it's still there. Surveilling the environment to make sure I'm safe.
Right. Yeah. The character defect, hypervigilant, or anybody getting too close, character defect. I was told character defects become character assets. So hypervigilant in the asset department is capacity to notice nuance and feeling and energy in a group setting for the purpose of, in the agreement, we're here to do this work, and I have permission to offer my perception.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great encapsulation of my own experience too. Is that hypervigilance is also the capacity to read the room and notice stuff that others may not be noticing.
Yeah.
Even in a Zoom setting, where all I can see is somebody's face.
Yeah. Yeah. I have been using Zoom quite a bit too, and I still am able to feel the energy that is being generated in the partnership or in the connection in the group, and the distance makes no difference. It's instantaneous. So.
Well, yeah, the emotional space does not correspond to physical space.
Right.
It's more a quantum property than a Newtonian.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
whatever that means.
Whatever that means. Wherever it is we're going, and experience, gaining experience, to me now, on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level, is actually the acquisition of wisdom and capacity to connect.
You know, it made me think of the British quantum physicist David Bohm. You ever heard of him?
Yes, I have.
There's a movie coming out about him. And when I did my master's work on consciousness, I got introduced to Bohm and his notion of Bohemian Dialogue. And much of what we do replicates Bohemian Dialogue. And which is, for those who don't know it, it's a process by which we can begin to probe into the collective consciousness. And in a Bohemian Dialogue, all the participants agree to basically do what we do in a accountability group meeting, which is tell the truth, only speak what's going on with us, refrain from any kind of conversation or comment about what other people are doing. If someone says something that triggers a response in me, then my commitment is I'm going to speak to what my response is and not where it came from.
Right.
And so there's he developed this because he was seeking to explore the implications of quantum theory, which is that everything is interconnected, even at the level of consciousness. And so he was like a lot of these characters. He was seeking innovative and unorthodox ways to explore the implications of the theory.
Right. He added his part of the puzzle. We're adding our part of the puzzle, and I have no idea what the great good big picture is going to be, and I'm willing to add my piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
With gusto and passion.
Yeah. So. Well, you spoke to that a few minutes ago about the knowing, and one of the things that I've worked on, I think I've shared this with you before, is that I've developed the willingness to not know. I'm willing to not know. I'm willing to not understand, so that I can just deal with. So my mind is always looking to understand and explain, and it's always going to do that. But at a deeper level, I'm willing to not know.
Yeah.
Not understand. I don't need the mental information. I'm always going to crave it, and I don't need it. I give myself permission to not know.
Right.
Because what you said, what I heard you say was, when we do that, then we create space for all kinds of information to show up. That when I have a belief system, I'm keeping out certain things if they don't conform.
The thought that just came to me is this dance does not need a choreographer.
Exactly.
It is well enough in its own, and I'll
Yeah.
be in the dance.
Yeah. In fact, you can't choreograph this dance.
No. Yeah. I was in a conference in Scottsdale, Arizona, and one of the slides I remember is the 4 ways we transform or heal, and he listed them. It was storytelling, movement, body movement, dance, music, sound, and silence. And there was not a word about lecture or pedagogical teaching. It was these 4 things that are dynamic facilitate transformation. So
yeah,
I want to be part of that.
You made me think of movement, even in the sense of changing environments. Like, just get up and get out of town for a weekend has healing value.
Yeah, I'm about that. I'm planning a trip to North Carolina, so I'm ready to take a break.
You're ready to practice the healing energy of motion.
Yeah, and see some old friends and talk and see where we're all at. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, sometime around the time you're leaving, I'm going down. Not going to be gone as long, but I'm going down to the Central Coast to hang out with a friend, and there's a farm down in Templeton.
Templeton where's that? What big city is that by?
That's between Paso Robles and San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
In the rolling hill country there along 101. I can actually take the train there from Sacramento.
Oh, wow. Are you gonna?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's called the Starlight. The Starlight Express goes from Seattle to San Diego, goes through Sacramento and then through the Salinas Valley into Santa Barbara.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've actually taken the train before, so it's quite convenient. Can you fly nonstop to North Carolina from San Diego?
Very rarely. Every once in a while you get a nonstop, but usually 1 or 2 stops, either Chicago, Dallas,
Yeah.
St. Louis.
American has a nonstop to Charlotte from here once a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm flying Southwest, so.
Yeah. Are you flying to Charlotte?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, we've covered a lot of stuff in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap up, as always, I'd like to ask you, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with?
What came up for me is like I used to listen to Joseph Campbell, and he would talk about, in his first part of his life, he would talk about meaning and purpose. And in his later years, he came to the conclusion, there is no meaning, there is no purpose, experience your life, and then see what happens. And that's the ultimate goal, is to be able to simply experience your life in a loving, passionate way.
Experience our life intentionally.
Yes. Okay.
Well, just once again, wish you happy birthday. I know that you just passed a milestone birthday last week, and I've got one coming up next week, so we're fellow Virgos.
Oh, wow. I knew there was a reason I liked you.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Virgos
It's all
rock.
astrologically controlled.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, brother. I look forward to checking in with you next week.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Marty.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.